My name is Elena Carter. I'm 41, and depending on who's asking, I'm either a successful businesswoman or just his aunt. I don't wear fancy jewelry or carry designer bags, and that's exactly how I like it. People assume a lot when you walk into a room without broadcasting your wealth. Today was no different. It was graduation day, and I sat 3 rows behind the proud parents, quiet and unnoticed. I didn't mind it. I was here for Jordan, my nephew. But as I scanned the crowd, I felt the familiar weight of assumptions settling over me. The woman beside me smiled politely, but shifted her designer purse between us like I might scuff it. 2 rows up, someone whispered, "She's probably the help." I've heard it all before, so I just crossed my legs and fixed my gaze on the stage. Jordan was about to walk across it. He was graduating with honors, something no one in our family had ever done. That alone was enough for me. But still, a part of me burned, because I'd done more than just raise him. I'd helped build the very stage he was about to step onto. I hadn't told anyone, not even Jordan. When the university approached me 5 years ago about a private donation, I agreed under one condition: anonymity. I didn't want plaques or speeches, just results. I knew what it felt like to be invisible in a place like this, to clean these halls at night, to be told, "You people don't belong here." So I made sure others like me would have a shot. Scholarships, mental health services, emergency housing. I funded all of it, quietly, deliberately. So watching Jordan now, beaming in his cap and gown, felt like witnessing my past and future colliding. He looked out into the crowd, searching for me, and when our eyes met, he smiled. My chest tightened. He had no idea how far we'd both come. 10 years ago, we were sleeping in the back of my car, eating from vending machines and washing up in gas station bathrooms. I worked 3 jobs, cleaning offices, waitressing, driving for a delivery app, while tutoring him at night. I told him we'd get out. I told him he'd go to college. He thought I was just dreaming. Maybe I was. But here he was now. Proof that dreams could wear caps and gowns too. The ceremony rolled on, and more whispers floated around me. One woman, dripping in pearls, leaned toward her husband and muttered, "Do you think she's even family?" He chuckled and said, "Probably just some aunt." That word, aunt, hung in the air like smoke. They didn't know the late nights I stayed up filling out his FAFSA forms, the meetings I took to fund programs for students like him, or the hours I spent pushing through doors people tried to keep shut. Just the aunt, they said. But I wasn't here for them. Then it happened. The dean took the podium. He began to thank donors, faculty, and staff, saving a special moment for what he called a figure who transformed this campus from the shadows. I didn't flinch. I thought he would keep it vague. He didn't. "Elena Carter," he said, his eyes sweeping the audience. "We see you today. You helped fund half this school." The crowd turned in slow motion. I felt every eye settle on me. The pearl-wearing lady choked on her surprise. The man beside her dropped his phone. I didn't move. I just breathed. As the dean stepped off stage, he walked straight toward me. The sea of heads parted. People stared, murmured, some even clapped. I stood slowly, my hands cold but steady. When he reached me, he didn't shake my hand. He hugged me, tight, warm, like he understood. And maybe he did. The crowd erupted in whispers again, but now they were different. I wasn't just the aunt anymore. I was Elena Carter, donor, fighter, the woman who changed their idea of who gets to belong in these halls. Jordan was still on stage, frozen mid-step, eyes wide. He looked stunned, confused. He mouthed, "You?" And I nodded, smiling through tears I hadn't noticed. He blinked fast, then beamed, a different kind of pride in his eyes. That moment, it undid years of invisibility, years of swallowing my story so others could have theirs. I had stayed quiet long enough, not for attention, but because I thought being loud would ruin the gift. Turns out sometimes, silence just keeps the truth locked away. The ceremony ended, and people approached me like I had grown wings. I was polite, gracious, but my heart was already walking beside Jordan, down the steps of that stage, into a new chapter neither of us had fully imagined. He reached me, still dazed, and hugged me harder than he ever had. "Why didn't you tell me?" he whispered. I held his face and said, "Because I didn't want you to feel you owed me anything. I just wanted you to fly." And he had. higher than either of us thought possible. After the ceremony, the crowd thinned but the whispers lingered. Parents approached with curious smiles, some eager to shake my hand, others trying to mask their earlier judgments. I kept my expression neutral, gracious, but guarded. Jordan walked beside me like a shadow rediscovering its source, stealing glances at me as if I were someone else entirely. "You really did that?" he asked for the 5th time. "You built all that?" I nodded, my voice soft. And I'd do it again, 1,000 times. But the truth was, it hadn't been easy. Nothing about my climb ever was. Back at the reception, under the white tents and twinkling lights, waiters passed champagne while jazz played low. I stood near the edge, watching Jordan talk with his professors, men who once intimidated him now laughing at his jokes. I remembered the first time he came home from school with a D in math and cried in my arms, saying he'd never be good enough. I told him he just needed time. That greatness doesn't bloom overnight. Seeing him now, confident and articulate, I felt something shift in me. Pride, yes, but also relief, like I could finally exhale after holding my breath for 10 years. A woman in a blue blazer approached me. "Ms. Carter?" she asked, almost cautiously. "I'm from the university board. We've heard so much about you." Her voice wavered between awe and apology. She thanked me, stumbled over compliments, and then asked something I wasn't expecting. "Would you consider joining the board?" I blinked. Me? The woman who once cleaned dorm bathrooms for minimum wage? I looked past her, to the rows of ivory-covered tables and polished alumni. I didn't answer right away. My silence wasn't hesitation. It was the weight of everything that question represented. I remembered the night I decided to drop out of college. I had just turned 20, and my mother had been diagnosed with late-stage cancer. I was in Boston, studying sociology, surviving on loans and microwaved noodles. When she called crying, I packed my things and came home. No second thoughts. I cleaned houses during the day and cared for her at night. When she passed, I was too broke to go back. That pain, the sacrifice, the lost years, fueled everything I became. I didn't build wealth out of ambition. I built it out of grief, out of the need to never feel that powerless again. When Jordan's parents passed, my sister and her husband, it wasn't even a question. I took him in. He was 6, grieving, confused. I was 30, still fighting for stability. We lived in a 1-bedroom apartment where I slept on the couch so he could have the bed. I didn't take vacations. I didn't date. I worked, saved, learned, taught myself about investments, stocks, real estate. Every dollar was a soldier, every choice a war. And slowly, the tide turned. By the time Jordan was 15, we moved into a townhouse. By 18, he had a full scholarship, and no idea I had helped fund the very program that awarded it. Jordan came over holding 2 plates of cake. "This is crazy," he said, handing me one. "You're like a legend now." I laughed, genuinely. "I'm still your aunt," I said. "Legend or not, I'm still going to remind you to call me on Sundays." He rolled his eyes, grinning. Then his face turned serious. "You really did all this alone?" The question hit me harder than I expected. "Not alone," I said quietly. "I had help along the way. Some mentors, some luck, and you. You kept me going more than you'll ever know." He nodded slowly, his eyes misting. "I wish I had known. Maybe I could have helped." I touched his hand. "You helped by becoming the man you are. That was always the point." Across the tent, a photographer waved at us. Jordan stood tall, putting his arm around me as the flash went off. In that moment, I felt like we were sealing something sacred. A quiet bond turned public, a hidden truth finally brought to light. No more hiding, no more pretending. The world could finally see the whole story, and we could finally own it. That night, back at our hotel, I sat by the window while Jordan slept. The city skyline glittered beyond the glass. I thought about what it meant to belong, not just to be accepted, but to walk into a place and know it can't reject you. I'd built that for others. I'd carved space where there was none. And now I was being asked to step into the light, to be visible, to guide, to lead. I wasn't sure I wanted it, but maybe that was the next mountain. Not for me, but for the Elenas still scrubbing floors with dreams in their pockets. I drafted an email to the university board. Short, precise. "I'd like to discuss the board position. but only if we commit to expanding access for first-generation students. No photo ops, just impact. I hit send and exhaled. It wasn't about titles or recognition. It was about making the climb easier for those coming behind me. I looked at Jordan's sleeping face, peaceful and unburdened. That, I realized, was my real success. Not the money, not the buildings, but the freedom I fought to give him. The freedom to dream without fear. 2 weeks after graduation, I flew back to Atlanta. My house felt too quiet without Jordan's books on the table and his half-drunk mugs of coffee on the counter. He was staying up north for a summer internship, his first real job, and one he earned entirely on his own. I should have felt relieved, even proud, but something gnawed at me. For so long I'd been in motion, always climbing, always fixing. Now, for the first time, I had space to breathe, and it scared me. What was my purpose now that the mountain had been climbed? I spent the first few days cleaning, cooking, pacing. I walked through every room like it might offer me a new direction. The silence in success is deafening when you've lived most of your life fighting noise. Then one morning, I got a call from a name I hadn't seen in years. Ms. Harmon, my old high school counselor. "Elena," she said, her voice thin with age but warm. "I saw the article about you. Could you come speak to our seniors?" I hesitated. Public speaking had never been my thing, but I heard the hope in her voice, and I said yes. Driving back to my old neighborhood felt like stepping through a time warp. The streets were narrower than I remembered. The corner store still had the same flickering sign. The school hadn't changed much. Same bricks, same peeling paint near the gym. But inside, the faces were new. Nervous kids in hoodies and sneakers, slouched in folding chairs, arms crossed. They looked at me like I didn't belong, like I was one of them, a guest speaker with stories too clean, too polished to be real. I smiled. They didn't know I had sat in those very same chairs. I didn't give them a script. I told them about sleeping in my car, about losing my mom, about mopping floors at night and studying finance in library corners. I told them the truth, and for the first time in weeks, I felt alive. Their eyes shifted from skepticism to silence, then focus. A girl in the back raised her hand. "So, wait, you didn't finish college and you still made it?" I nodded. Education matters, but grit matters more. And not letting where you start define where you end, that matters most. She nodded slowly, as if holding on to the idea like oxygen. Afterward, a boy with tired eyes waited until the others left. He looked maybe 16. "My mom works nights too," he said quietly, "at the hospital. I try to study, but I'm just tired." I knelt down so we were eye to eye. "I get it. I really do," I said. "But you're not alone. You keep showing up. That's where it begins." He didn't say anything, just nodded. That was enough. I left the school feeling like I had planted something. Not a tree, just a seed. But seeds grow, especially when someone believes in them. That night, I received an email from the university board. My proposal had been approved. They wanted to move forward with me as a board member and even asked if I'd be willing to help design a mentorship program. It felt surreal. The same halls that once looked past me now asked for my vision. I thought about it all night. Then I emailed back. Let's not call it mentorship. Let's call it legacy ladders, because that's what we're doing, building ladders for those who come after us. I knew then this wasn't just a new chapter. It was a whole new book. Jordan called a few days later, sounding breathless. "I met someone," he blurted out. I laughed. "A person or a job?" "Both," he grinned. "But the job is insane. They actually asked if I had family at the university." I said, "Yeah, my aunt. She kind of built half of it." I smiled, leaning back into the sofa. He sounded different, more grounded, more sure, and for the first time, I wasn't afraid of him outgrowing me. I wanted him to. That was the point all along, to give him wings, not anchors. But not everyone welcomed my rise. A former colleague from my early business days messaged me. "So you're a philanthropist now?" he wrote, followed by a smirking emoji. I didn't reply. I didn't need to. People will always try to box you in based on who you were when they met you. They rarely know what it costs to become who you are. And I wasn't interested in defending the journey. Let them talk. Let them doubt. I knew my truth. And more importantly, I knew what I wanted to do next. I started writing again, something I hadn't done since my 20s. Late at night, after the city quieted down, I'd sit with a cup of tea and my old journal. I wrote about being invisible, about dignity and struggle, about the quiet strength of women like my mother. I didn't know if I'd publish it. That wasn't the point. It was therapy, a mirror, a map. I wanted to leave more than just money behind. I wanted to leave stories, truths, reminders that the climb was real, and the view from the top meant nothing if you didn't remember the ground. By the end of the month, the invitations started arriving. Conferences, podcasts, awards. I turned down most. Not out of pride, but because I wanted to choose carefully. Fame didn't interest me. Impact did. I agreed to one panel. Women Who Build. It sounded right. Not glamorous, but honest. On that stage, under soft lights and sharp questions, I told my story once more. Not for applause, but for the girl in the back of the room, wondering if she could ever be more than just the aunt. Because she could, and I was living proof. Summer turned into fall, and Jordan returned to campus, not as a student, but as a part-time research assistant and mentor for incoming freshmen. He sent photos, the library I helped renovate, the new dorms with murals he said made the space feel like someone cared. It hit me then. Legacy isn't just what you build. It's how people feel in what you've built. I hadn't just funded buildings. I had created belonging. And watching Jordan move through those spaces, confident and whole, felt like healing something younger in me that never got the chance. I started visiting the university more, meeting with students from backgrounds like mine. Some were raised by grandparents. Others came from shelters or foster care. Their stories varied, but the thread was always the same. Resilience. They didn't want pity. They wanted pathways. I made it a mission to connect them with people who saw more than their transcripts. One girl told me, "No one ever looked at me like I could lead, until you did." I smiled and said, "Sometimes it takes someone who's walked barefoot to build a road worth walking." Meanwhile, my story spread further than I expected. A national magazine published a feature titled, "The Woman Behind the Scholarships." Suddenly, people I hadn't heard from in decades reached out. Some were genuine. Others wanted photo ops or partnerships. I filtered them carefully, not out of suspicion, but out of clarity. I knew who I was now. I knew what mattered. Visibility had become a tool, but it would never be my identity. I wasn't a brand. I was a woman who worked, who struggled, who survived. That truth didn't need polish, just space. One afternoon, I walked the halls of the business building that now bore my name, the Carter Center for Equity in Education. I had resisted the naming at first, but eventually agreed, on one condition. The plaque would tell the full story. It read, "Founded by Elena Carter, former university janitor and lifelong advocate for first-generation students." I stood there a long time, hand on the cool brass, letting the weight of those words settle. It wasn't ego. It was record, a trace, proof for the ones who'd come next, that no starting point is too low to rewrite. Jordan surprised me that weekend. He drove down unannounced, a duffel bag slung over his shoulder, and said, "I just needed to be home for a bit." We didn't talk much that first evening. We cooked dinner together like we used to, laughed over old stories. Then, sitting at the table, he reached into his bag and pulled out a manuscript. "It's a book," he said. "Your story, my perspective. I've been writing it since graduation." I stared at it, heart in my throat. He titled it, "More Than the Ant." I didn't cry. I wept. We spent the weekend editing it together, page by page. It was raw, honest, clumsy in places, but powerful. He remembered things I had forgotten. His voice gave mine a mirror. And in doing that, we became co-authors, not just of a story, but of a life rebuilt in tandem. He asked if we could publish it. I said yes, on one condition. We donate all proceeds to fund an emergency student support fund. He smiled and said, "Deal." It felt like passing the baton. Like everything I had carried was now his to shape and protect. A few months later, the book launched. Quietly. No press tour. No flash. Just a table at the campus bookstore and a few readings. But it caught fire in its own way. Professors added it to their syllabi. Students quoted it in their essays. And one morning, a girl stopped me near the quad. "Ms. Carter?" she asked, nervous. "I read your story. I just wanted to say thank you. It made me feel seen. I hugged her, holding back tears. That was the real bestseller. That moment, that affirmation, that proof that stories don't just live on pages. They live in people. Now, at 42, I live slower. I travel sometimes, not for business, but to breathe. I still mentor students, still serve on the board, but I no longer feel like I have to prove anything. My past no longer haunts me. It honors me. I keep my cleaning uniform in a shadow box in my office, right next to the university crest. It reminds me who I was, who I am, who I fought to become. And when people ask what I do now, I say, I help others climb. Because that's what legacy really is. Not the summit, but the ladder left behind. Sometimes I walk the campus early before students fill the halls. I run my fingers along the railings I once scrubbed. I sit on the benches I once collapsed on after shifts. And I think about my mother, about her voice, her hands, her sacrifices. I wonder if she'd be proud. I think she would. She'd probably laugh and say, "You always were stubborn, Elena." I smile at the thought, because she was right. I was. I am. And in that stubbornness, I found grace. In that struggle, I found purpose. And in that quiet invisibility, I built a legacy no one can erase.